Hello, I'm Dr. Jeffrey Fidel. In this video, I'd like to go over attachment and what attachment and non-attachment mean, particularly as it's used in the spiritual sense. To attach to something is to hold on to it mentally. That's where the attachment is made. So it's never about physically attaching to something, like being attached to something outside of ourselves physically. This even means attaching to people or places. There's nothing to do with physical attachments whatsoever. All the attachment is within the mind. So what's attaching? The mind is attaching to an idea or a belief system. Now, this attachment starts to happen early on, very early on. The very first attachment we probably make is attachment to our name, believing that we're actually our name. We're assigned these words very early as children. Our senses take them in, and then we attach to that word. So my name is Jeff, and of course when I was growing up, I always thought I was a Jeff. And then the mind begins to attach to other words, certain pronouns like I, me, my. All these words are learned very early on. They're just sounds, but we form these attachments in our mind and associations that over time we believe ourselves to actually be these memories stored in our mind as thoughts, either auditory or visual thoughts. So the mind starts to attach to these ideas, and it forms these beliefs. This includes even attachment to belief systems themselves, that we were taught that there is a God. If we were taught certain religions, we were all taught these things, and then we store more and more information in our mind, and we attach. Who's attaching? The mind is attaching to these ideas as if they're absolute truths. And this just continues on throughout life. So more and more thoughts accumulated, more and more beliefs accumulated, and more attaching to these as truth. So what does it mean to non-attach? Well, to non-attach is to get to begin to understand that none of these things were ever true. That although we acquired this knowledge over time, there's no absolute truth to these words having to do with our identity. In fact, they have virtually nothing to do with our identity. All they are is recorded concepts or understandings. So, in my example, if my name is Jeff, well, that has nothing to do with me. I take my name away and voila, I'm still here. The word I has nothing to do with me. That's the 9th letter of the alphabet. I learned this early on, like me also, another word. These are all just language stored in the mind. I take any of these words away and nothing happens to the intrinsic existence that makes me up. And notice again how I say me, but I'm referring to the form of me when I say me. This is the form of the me. So the non-attachment is to understand that none of these beliefs have any intrinsic truth whatsoever. There's nothing true about them. None of these words recreate anything about the me or the I. Nothing. So once all is non-attached to, including a belief of a God or a religion, all that's discarded. Everything is discarded. You pretty much come in completely empty-handed, and then you arrive at just this present moment. And then there is nothing else to attach to. In other words, thoughts just become thoughts. They're no longer associated with the identity of the being. Everything has been now non-attached. So although the thoughts remain in the mind as memories, there's no more identification of the being with the thinking mind. That's no longer there. The identity is then realized to be completely unknowable and completely unnameable. In other words, this is how I now know myself, is that there is no way I can know myself or the environment around me. If I try to think about who it is that I am, that will just be a thought of who I am. If I try to think about what this universe, existence, multiverse, omniverse, God is, again, I'm just coming up with these ideas, which are useful, of course, if we're going to have a conversation, because we need language to communicate. But the understanding is complete that these conceptual understandings have no real absolute truth whatsoever, because none of those words can reproduce any reality. And in the absence of any language, the intrinsic existence that is this present moment goes on. So one is completely non-attached in the spiritual sense. All conceptual identities, ideas, belief systems are no longer held to be true in any regard. What's true today is not true tomorrow, and that's understood. So we use language when we're in the state of non-attachment as a means of communication, but in no way do they have any absolute truth. So what we're left with once again is the present moment itself is the identity. In other words, we are this present moment of life itself. We are inseparable from this present moment. The present moment is life itself.